Hello, everyone. I'm Alex,
And I'm Ryan.
and this is another episode of Between Shelf and Screen. So, shelf. You know, dude, I'm doing what you do, but worse.
No, it's not worth it. I get it, man. It's
Okay,
tough. You're put on the spot.
okay. So,
I'm leaving this in next week.
yeah.
That's the introduction.
So in the last episode, we discussed the book "Conversations with Friends" by Sally Rooney, and we went ahead and watched the show, first season.
We were supposed to do that?
Oh, never mind. I'm gonna go home now. You just wasted my time. But yeah, so last episode was over the book, the source material, and now we watch the show, and now we're gonna compare them
Yeah, we're going to discuss what we thought about the show first. And
in
then
detail. This is gonna be a long one. The ones with shows are usually a lot longer.
Yeah,
So
there's 12 episodes. I spent 6 hours watching this, and I definitely felt like 6 hours. That's what I was saying. Didn't feel shorter, didn't feel longer.
yeah. So this is gonna be one of those episodes where we're probably gonna disagree because we chatted a little bit beforehand.
Yeah, to get on the same page of what to discuss.
Yeah, but I guess we could start with you overall, just rating. How did you feel about it?
Right. I do think it picked up really well, but oh my gosh, it was so slow in the beginning. I was like, I'm good for slow burns. I already knew where this book or where the show was going because of the book, and I knew it was gonna get interesting, but
I mean,
I
to be
was so
fair,
bored.
yeah, sorry. To be fair, at the beginning of the book, for like the first 60 pages, I was literally, I talked to you. I'm like, does it pick up? I'm like, don't get me wrong, I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, is something gonna happen?
I feel like
And
we
it
were
did.
opposite because I felt that about the show, but not really the book.
Yeah, the book. I mean, it did take a while, and I was still like, the writing style. Like I've said this before, it'll keep me intrigued if I enjoy the writing style, but it was still slow because I was just like, I was like, I just can't see a plot. I don't know what's working towards. And the show definitely does have that same effect in the sense where like you just start and you're like, what is actually happening? It's so mundane, like the book, that you're just like, something's got to happen.
Right, and I think part of why I actually didn't like how the show did it was mostly because of the dialogue and lack thereof, which kind
Yeah.
of it plays its part and it makes more sense throughout the show when you kind of figure out the characters. But I just I don't know, we didn't get Francis's thoughts at all,
Right.
so that was like a huge
It's a huge shift. Yeah.
because that's probably 80% of the book
Yeah.
is just what she thinks about things. But I would say the first 4 episodes,
Kind of tough. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. It took a hot second for me to be intrigued by it, which isn't all that common for me.
I would say for me, it's probably like episode 2 or 3 where I was hooked because I already kind of knew where it was going. I knew once Nick was introduced, it would start getting interesting.
Yeah. I feel like by the time they were on vacation, by the fifth episode, that's where I was like, okay, now we're getting into some drama. Because I just felt like nothing was really all that at stake in the
Yeah,
beginning.
I mean nothing really is in the story
It's
ever.
true.
Like, it's a slice of life. And honestly, I'm gonna start using that categorization a lot more, just because I feel like when anime, when they title something slice of life, it's such a better way than just being like fiction or drama.
Yeah.
You know?
Right. Because you definitely have a better idea going into it. Because I know there's certain shows that I wouldn't have liked unless if I didn't know that. Because if I was looking for something that was more, I don't know, action based or just more dramatic, whatever.
Supernatural.
Yeah, anything of that sort. And maybe some of these have that touch. And when I read the description, I'm like, oh yeah. But then if I go into it and it's just mundane things that kind of have a certain aspect, I'd be kind of disappointed. But then when I know it's going to be a slice of life, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I want to sit down and watch right now. And I'll be watching it at the right moment. And maybe I just wasn't in the mood those first ending episodes, but like I kind of had to watch it or whatever.
Right. And I like typically when I read it, like I'm usually not in this genre really at all. Like like I said, like I like horror, like sci-fi,
Yeah, you
literary
like
fiction.
being scared shitless.
I do.
Like pooping your pants.
I do. I love it. But like when it comes to shows, I guess I'm uh more well versed in my genres. Like I'm not a big fantasy reader, but I'll watch a fantasy series.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to just like a drama, I'm much more open to watch that. But I don't know. I feel like I want to get into more like just slice of life reading and just drama in general after this because I really enjoyed watching the show. Like I really did. That like more than I expected to because I even told you I was like I thought that watching this was just going to be like a chore, something that I was just going to have to labor through, but like I said after the second or third episode, like I was in. Like I was like this okay, I'm enjoying this way more than I thought I would.
Yeah, and I want to clarify, I didn't think that the whole show was a, a chore to watch, but it was hard in the beginning, but I'm still super glad that I watched it, and I think they did a really good job for the most part, accuracy-wise.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Acting was like superb. Like those actors were perfectly casted.
I wouldn't say that they were perfectly, but they did a great job with their role.
Mhm.
Um,
I particularly like Frances's actress. Like cuz like her version really amplified things. Well, it'll kind of lead us into the other conversation about like Bobby. But like her way of acting as Frances really like um brings or emphasizes her like awkwardness and like her kind of latching on to Bobby and how she can be like kind of just like cold.
yeah.
Like it really emphasizes that. And then one of the biggest changes that ties into is Bobby and her character. And if you watch the last episode, which, you know, one of our 7 viewers maybe did, um, though you'll know that I was like I know Bobby was supposed to be written like this, but like she is so annoying.
You thought she was insufferable, basically, up
Yeah.
until the very end where she was somewhat redeemable.
Yeah, but then in this show, Bobby's they do a couple tweaks that makes her a lot more likable.
Yeah. Is it because she's a woman? Is that why you didn't like her?
Yeah.
No, I definitely wasn't as strongly put off by her as you were.
Yeah.
Because she was a very strong character in the book, and I think that's what it, you know,
Hinged off of.
yes. And if you just don't vibe with that kind of person, you're not really gonna like her character. But I
Well,
think
yeah, the point, like I've said before, the point of her character wasn't to be likable. Sorry.
no, you're good.
Sorry. I cut you off. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah, because I'm a woman. And clearly we're seeing a different side of you. So in the movie, in the show, I think we just didn't see as much of her more extreme and like, because they cut off some of the mundane, like really mundane things that weren't important to the story, and a lot of that had to do with just Bobby arguing with everyone, especially in the beginning. And I was thinking that we partially didn't see her in the same light because we didn't hear any of Frances's thoughts and emotions clouding it. And so, like, it didn't seem as strong because it wasn't like Frances saying, well, she's always perfect. Everyone always loves her. And whatever it was at that moment. So,
Yeah, and like
I think that added to
Yeah.
her character of wanting to, like, kind of dislike her in a sense.
Yeah, and like seeing like Bobby play out in the social settings with like just literally seeing it and how she could just like talk to anybody and how awkward and sort of kind of like almost like in a nervous sort of way confrontational that she could be, you start to understand why Bobby is a little bit like well versed and more socialized and just easier to be around as opposed to
Yes.
Frances.
100%. And I think Bobby was the least, especially in the show, was the least flawed. Like, she
Yeah.
had her shit together.
She did. And then even in the show too, like another character change would be like Melissa. Melissa's a lot more like level-headed and like likable, I felt like.
Oh, yeah, I would definitely say likable. She just wasn't as off-putting, I guess, and, like, rich, bougie
Yeah, and
kind of girl that Frances
yeah.
described her. But again, this was just the way that Frances was thinking about it, and she like saw
Yeah.
all this expensive stuff and was like, "Wow, it's one of these people."
Yeah, and I feel like Melissa really tried to give an olive branch out to like Frances, and also that she owned up to her mistakes, which is like she did in the book, but like she like there's a couple scenes, like the big email, right, where like Melissa basically says like all this stuff.
Is this a spoil? Are we going into spoilers right now?
Do you want to? I can hold off on this.
I guess let's just give our rating.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll get into this. So if you're intrigued in what he has to say, you'll have to stick around.
Yeah.
But
I thought it was really good. That's my rating.
yeah, I think it wasn't as good as the book. I would give it like a 3.5. I would bum it down one score lower than what I thought about the book. But all around, the end definitely picked it back up.
Yeah.
Because my score would have been lower if it kept up the same momentum as the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good. The adaptation, really good,
Yeah.
I'll say.
Very faithful.
The beginning was the least faithful part. They made a lot of changes, but then it all connected by the end.
Yeah, I think very faithful. Kept the soul of the story in it, and the actors really well casted. Like, and I want to say, like a couple of them, like Nick and Melissa. Like I had seen them in other stuff, but like as far as like Frances or Bobby, really those actresses were new,
Yeah.
and I haven't really seen them before, but they did really well.
Yeah, I think all around they did really well, especially with the type of show that this is, because it relied a lot about emotions and what you could express, because there wasn't that much dialogue.
Right.
And I think jumping from that, we should talk about who we would suggest this to.
Yeah. So let me think. I feel like if you're of the crowd that enjoys dramas, you're probably gonna enjoy this. If you like romance, you're probably gonna enjoy this as well. What do you think?
I would say that if you're just getting into or looking into a slice of life or a contemporary / like literary fiction, I would not suggest this as your first because it is such a slower beginning. Even I would say slower than the average slice of life, which is already pretty slow.
Right.
So I wouldn't suggest it to a person, I guess a beginner in that sense of the genre. But yeah, people that just are well versed with it and looking for kind of likes to dive into different kind of theories, especially when it involves like romance and love, because one of the biggest plot points is kind of just this affair.
Yeah.
And so it takes a different route than you would typically think.
Right. And that's the most intriguing part.
100%. So like if you like stuff that isn't really following the norm and gives you something to think about, you would love this show and the book.
Right. And I will say too, I'm not usually into romance.
Yeah.
I like dramas. I'm not usually into romance so much. But that new perspective kind of kept me coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Spoilers now?
Yes, so we'll get into spoilers now.
Okay.
So if you now are interested, probably you don't want to listen to this next part, but still, like and subscribe. And we'll be coming out every week with, or I guess
New
every
content.
other week. Well, yeah, every week with new content, but every other week we discuss a new book, different genres, and all sorts.
But yeah, I guess we'll shift back to like what I was getting
The
to.
Melissa.
Yeah, the Melissa. So there's like a big kind of change that like, so basically when Nick tells Melissa that he's having the affair with Frances, like Melissa basically sends a very, very long email that's like all over the place, and it's just kind of like basically just
Jumping from thought to thought, she's
it's like
having in the moment.
it's like of the writing style that is stream of consciousness.
Yes.
And it's like
I love it.
I love it too. And it's like very interesting, and then she's like, anyways, we should get dinner, like at the end of it. So instead of that,
And
they
all
just
Francis's response with, "Lot to think about. Let's do dinner."
yeah.
It's just so her.
Yeah, but then the show changes it in the sense where like they just said like Melissa's just like we need to meet up for dinner and talk, and then she's Frances says a lot to think about. Let's do it, and so she meets up just her at going to Melissa's house with just her, and she makes dinner, and then they discuss it, and the stream of consciousness email like it just basically shows Melissa's thoughts, and in a lot of ways it sounds like she's trying to make excuses for the way she acted towards Nick, and then it makes her kind of seem like she's trying to cope with the fact that she's okay with this affair, but she's not really, but she's trying to figure out a way because she doesn't want Nick to leave her. And in this one,
It's way more emotional.
yeah,
And
and it,
lots of different emotions.
right, and I felt like honestly, I feel like the show version where they just confront each other face to face was like just as I think the scene did a justice because it shed a new light on Melissa and made her a little bit more likable because in the email she made a bunch of excuses for it herself, like talking about why she had that affair with Nick, and then like explained the situation, but it just made her not look so good. But in the show she basically just says she's just like he was depressed and the way I dealt with that was by sleeping with his friend. And so she basically owns up to it and she recognizes what she did was wrong. And then she basically is talking to Frances and she's like, although I don't like what is happening, I want to make this work. So like she's trying actively to be the bigger person and just make it work because their marriage is already in a very vulnerable state.
Yeah, that's true. And I feel like they never really discuss it after in the book. Sorry, they
Yeah.
never really discussed it
At all.
after
Yeah, they're like, oh, let's talk at dinner, and then like
at dinner.
they're
Yeah,
like,
because
anyways,
everyone was invited, so it's not like they had a one-on-one in the book.
yeah,
So I do kind of appreciate the show adding that one-on-one, especially because I liked Frances's responses throughout. Because obviously, she wasn't responding throughout the email because it was all one email.
yeah,
But I like appreciate seeing that. But I feel like the stream of consciousness is like the more realistic response, especially since
yeah,
it takes a lot to like actually sit down one on one, and I feel like that's out of Frances' comfort zone. I feel like her as a character really wouldn't have wanted to agree with that, especially the place
right.
she was in and whatever.
Well, it makes sense because she wants to be with Nick so bad.
That's true. But then I also feel like Melissa was kind of in the book, at least, a character that really didn't view her husband all that highly. And I think she still loved him to an extent, but it wasn't like, I don't know, she just kind of seemed like she did use him.
Yeah, she's like, whatever. This is just convenient for me, and I'm too comfortable to move on. So
Yeah, so I feel like it's also out of her character to be like,
yeah, because
we
she's
should have dinner specifically to discuss this.
right, and like in the book, she's the closest thing there is to an antagonist. I believe there's no such thing as in like that sort of story that's character based, but
Except the mind. I mean, it was hurting her.
the fact that they didn't communicate, that's the real villain.
Communication is not key in this story.
God, no. Yeah. If you want healthy examples of like relationships, this is not a good example.
Oh, shoot. I need to change some things around. Oh, man.
Yeah, rule number 1, relationships, cheat. Second rule.
Especially when they're at their lowest.
Second rule, hide your intentions, never communicate. Third rule, blow up in a public setting.
Or even sometimes private, and make sure that that's a relationship ending. And again, kind of loops back to rule 2. Don't communicate about it.
Yeah. And then the last rule?
Everything's solved by breaking up and then getting back together.
The last rule is get endometriosis.
What about
Working
for the
on
men?
that one.
What if it's 2 men?
Oh, men can't get it?
Men will never understand our pain.
Stupid
Honestly,
men.
though, endometriosis
Yeah.
is like I know a couple people that have it.
I said like endometriosis.
Well, yeah, you don't
Endometriosis, yeah.
understand the female anatomy.
No, that was funny because like when they brought it up in the book, I was just like the fact that Francis didn't know and I knew what it was. I was just like, "Ew,
No, what?
I'm an ally."
I am so proud. Let me give you a gold star
Thank you.
for knowing what it was. I'm like so proud. That's actually exactly what I wanted to hear, and like that's it. You just kind of cured it.
You're right.
You know, you've become aware, and now
Ally
it's-
status.
But, anyways, gosh, it is hard, and I can't believe that she was like, "Yeah, I'm just not gonna tell people." Okay,
Right.
I kind of get her believing where she was at in the moment of she was like,
Yeah.
"I don't want to be viewed any differently." But,
Yeah,
like,
but
oh
like,
my gosh, the pain that I've heard from like
Yes.
some people that I know.
like I knew people that said they had to get like 800 milligram like ibuprofen.
Yeah, and like, I mean, it's true. Like, you genuinely like you'll be throwing up.
Yeah, you'll be in such
can't
bad pain
imagine.
that you like it's just like unbearable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I feel like awful for the people that have to go through that kind of pain.
And also, like, it is very much so within Frances's character to be like not wanting to tell anybody because she thinks she's gonna get judged. But like, it is so common. Like they even say it in the show. They're like, "Oh, don't
Yeah.
worry, 1 in 10 women have it."
Yeah,
And
unfortunately.
yeah, and it's also it's like it just the big thing that I realized or that I don't even think when she communicated it to Nick that like why she talked about it. I don't even think she was being truthful. Good because she was upset because like Melissa didn't want a baby,
And she
and then
possibly.
yeah, and she's like maybe I can provide that one thing to Nick that she can't. And then when she figured out that she possibly couldn't, it just threw her whole plans out of whack.
I also think that that was most of the reason she wasn't going to admit that. But it is also weird she didn't say that to her mom. She didn't say it
Yeah.
to Bobby, which doesn't really have as big of an impact. So I think it partially played a part that she didn't want to be judged because she had a fear of being judged by everyone. I mean, she tried
Yeah.
to fit in.
Well, she just thought that she was going to be dropped by Nick.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest part of not telling him in that moment. But still, like, not telling her mom, it definitely had ulterior
Yeah.
motive for that. But I don't know. Frances just, like, hid everything. She
Yeah.
just didn't communicate, period.
Yeah, she was terrible at that. And I feel like she really relates that from her dad. But we're just getting into character analysis now. We're not even talking about the show.
Oh, yeah, the differences.
Yeah.
Okay, we can get
We can
into
get
that.
the differences.
Let's
I
start
guess.
from the beginning, because that's, like, the most differences. I kind of don't really play a part, but we'll just run through them.
Yeah.
Of, like, at least my biggest pet peeves, I guess, with that. It's
Yeah.
not pet peeve.
Or just grievances.
Yeah. So, first, them meeting Melissa, and they just go swimming. For
Yeah.
whatever reason. They just met her, and she's like, "I come back."
Did you guys swim?
I was like, is that what people do in London?
Yeah, I
Or
guess
I don't
so.
even know where they are. Are they? They're not in London. I'll tell you that. I don't
Yeah, no, actually maybe are they? Like I don't know.
No, they're not in London.
But
they might be
they're in like a
England.
city or something. They
Oh,
might
they're
have
in a
said it.
city? Shoot, I didn't.
They might have said it though. I think we're just missing that
definitely
beat.
did.
It's not that important. It's not that important.
Anyways, what I meant was that it's like that what people do outside of American because we are uncultured Americans, and maybe that's just a thing.
No, for real though. I think
You have to tell me when you go.
we're missing out a lot on the cultural experience because we just live in the suburbs. That's where the culture
The
dies.
suburbs.
The suburbs. Yeah, the only town I know that they go to, or at least where Francis is from, is Dublin. Dublin. Dublin.
Everyone turn this off.
No. You got to say it in an Irish accent. So Dublin? No. Yeah, you know what?
I was gonna say, please continue.
I can't do it. I love the Irish accent though. That's truth. I do love it.
Yeah, you were really into Francis or whatever.
Oh
Down
yeah,
bad.
yeah. You know, maybe I just like cold, emotionally unavailable women. Maybe that's my problem.
No problem. Definitely.
No, yeah. She's a very attractive woman.
Yeah,
And leave it at that.
You women?
Yes.
Just
No.
being mean.
No. YouTube,
Yeah,
no.
before you get canceled.
I love women. They can have personalities. I'm an
By
ally.
your standards, you'll kind of pinpoint what their personality should be. But
Yes.
it's okay if they have it as long as you approve.
Yes.
Like a written contract kind of thing. Okay.
I'm an ally.
Oh, kind of like in the war, like you have allies, and it's kind of like a contract between them. That's like
Yeah, but you don't actually care how they do.
Right, exactly.
As long as you don't get caught down with them.
Anyways,
Jokes.
I can't wait to talk about war
Oh yeah.
in a few books.
That'll be fun.
Woo!
Ooh.
We're looping back around to World War II.
We are, yeah.
The book thief.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And now we're gonna get into nonfiction. You guys think that we just stick to fiction? Mm-mm.
Yeah, we have a vast amount of.
I have a lot of interests, and you guys are gonna be forced to like them all.
Yeah, because again, you're forcing your
Belief
opinions
system.
and personality on the other. Anyways, I can't even remember. All that I remember is that we did accents that sucked.
Oh
That's
yeah.
where we
No, we
left
were
off.
talking about just the differences. So okay, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll loop back to that. So
Okay,
then
the swimming pool.
Yeah. So the swimming part, that was different. And also there's a big difference with Bobby, and she is from New York, which she's not in the book.
Right.
And yeah, she's just likable. Like a lot less
because
like
she's from New York.
Yeah.
She's American.
yeah, but she's a lot like I found her to be a lot more likable, and I don't know if that's a change within like we're viewing it or just the tweaks that they did for her personality, which are small. I don't know if it's a combination of both, but I found Bobby to be a lot more like understandable, likable, even more so than Francis, which I actually liked more in the book. Weird.
Yeah, I like Bobby a lot. I thought of them. I was gonna say equally, but that's not what I meant. I appreciate them equally, I guess. I didn't like one over the other in the book, but I definitely like Bobby a lot. She's probably my favorite character in the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would say.
That and I really liked. I feel like that stayed the same. I still liked
Nick?
Nick. I think he was, and also Melissa.
I feel like Bobby had the most personality out of
Definitely.
all of them. Everyone else was just so bland. And please, someone tell me, why did Francis and Nick actually like each other? Especially in the show.
I think it was a lot of chemistry, really, and then
Mostly, yeah.
and it's also just timing for Nick. I mean, he kind of explained that.
Right, I know.
She brought him out of a slump.
Actually, but would this realistically happen in real life? Actually applying their relationship to real life, it would not work out. They just had no build up, and especially in the show, they had no introduction. It just kind of jumped to them.
Yeah.
Right there. It was so.
The attraction part.
Yeah.
You can tell the actors really had some chemistry too.
Oh yeah, for sure. I just feel like what bothered me the most about the beginning was the fact that they just jumped to everything. There was no build up of any of the relationships, so it felt off put.
I feel like I disagree.
Why?
Because at the beginning, obviously Francis and Nick were just riding off the attraction of one another, and they're kind of learning stuff about each other. But once they kind of understand each other a little bit more, because they communicate in the same way, which is not very well, but they kind of there's an unspoken they can kind of understand each other even though they don't say too much.
A little bit, but definitely more in the show than the book.
Yeah.
But I feel like Francis was always mad that he wasn't complimenting her in the
Right.
book.
Yeah. That's definitely that gets emphasized more in the book rather than the show.
Yeah, it really didn't get emphasized in the show besides here and there because we, again, can't hear her thoughts. But I think she did do a good part or a good job of showing the facial expressions because I could tell at some moments where she didn't like his response to something. But anyways, I just feel like the build-up of the relationship in the sense that they meet, have dinner, whatever, and then obviously like instant attraction. They have that conversation, same as the book, and then it jumped to her. Or the one difference was that he said he was in the show during the first time they met, and she was like, "Oh, you should send me tickets." And then she just went. That was like the next scene.
And then she didn't talk to him, which is hilarious.
Exactly, and she didn't go with Philip this time either, so she had no excuse. So I just thought that was weird and kind of like thrown in there with no real context. Because yeah, we knew she was attracted and whatever, but then it just never turned out into anything.
Yeah. Also, I want to kind of mention this now. This kind of popped into my head. Like, what was the point of Philip in both the book and the show? What was the point of his character? To maybe show, like, this is my theory, but like also it doesn't. I just don't get it. But like, I feel like he is a contrast. It's like he's everything that's like normal, and he's like level-headed, and then he looks at them and he's like, okay. Like, I feel like that's the whole point of his character.
That's what I was gonna explain it as. It's just he was there to provide the contrast of how just out there and kind of show that it's not like this is just a different world or reality, that cheating is not as, I guess, frowned upon. Yeah. It was like, no, we're still in a normal world, and it's
so he's the constant reminder of like, hey, what you guys are doing, a little bit whack.
Yeah. You know, one thing is the internship wasn't as big of a deal in the show, and I feel like that wasn't a main plot point, but it did show that like Frances just didn't have interest in anything.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
She just didn't want to work, and I feel like part of that had to do with or not wanting to be judged, and that's partially why she was like felt weird being a barista.
Right.
Did I?
Barista.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean,
barista.
I knew what you meant.
That's embarrassing considering I was a barista. But
barista.
Okay, that was more embarrassing.
That was. I'm gonna shove my head in the toilet, get myself a swirly for that one.
I could just shove you under the little steamer.
Let's do that.
So, I think that the internship kind of showed a part. She also just didn't want to go through everyday life. Like, she didn't want to be just a normal functioning human.
I know, yeah. Like, I feel like the book really, like, highlighted how, like, kind of privileged she is. Yeah. And she's just, like, she can just graduate college and not have to worry about what she wants to do. And she gets, like, her apartment pretty much covered for her.
Yeah, her dad owns it.
Yeah.
So, like, they literally, neither of them have to pay.
Yeah.
She owns it, and then
that really irked me. I mean, like, it wasn't, like, necessarily, like, a bad writing thing. And then, like, because I feel like she did that purposefully.
Oh, 100%.
To show, like, oh, these characters have their issues, but, like, also, they're by no means, like, in terrible circumstances. Yeah. Like, they got it pretty much made.
Or, like, not necessarily, I mean, they definitely had some terrible issues going on, but it wasn't like a financial reason.
Yeah, or it wasn't like life-shattering.
Yeah. It wasn't like, yeah. Basically that, I think, sums it up.
Yeah.
So, and I think in the book she acknowledged more of like, I guess I am privileged, but also I'm still going to complain about it, while the show didn't really cover it.
Yeah, and then they would also like, and then I remember at one point they were like, with the conversations they would have, she was talking about how like she kind of felt bad for her privilege, which she acknowledges it
in the book.
Yeah, but I guess they don't really touch on that too much in the show, which
really
I kind of, which I honestly I don't mind that change.
I don't think it added that much.
Yeah.
I'm like...
It just made me a little bit more annoyed with them at points.
Yeah. I always thought of it as being like, okay, you know, white people that have a good head up. She's
white people, man.
Well, no, let me finish.
I know. Sorry.
But, you know... She has privilege in that sense, and then privilege, she's literally attending university, not having to pay for it.
Yeah.
And she's still like, I don't get enough as them. Like, looking at the Nick's house, and being jealous of that in some sense, which of course that's just human nature of.
Right. It is. It's not like these.
It's not like she was
It's not like it's
coerced
unrealistic.
about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because, I'm sure we can all relate to them in some ways where, like, we get caught up in our life and, but we get caught up in our lives that are kind of, just like, we have little problems.
Yeah,
And then like, if they're the only problems that you have to deal with, they seem big, but then you, like, take more of a perspective and you look, you're like, oh, you know what? I'll be all right.
Right. I just didn't do that all that
Yeah.
much. Like, everything in Francis' life, like, it was just all kind of, revolved around her.
Yeah.
So, and not in the sense where, like, that's sort of the all she could think about. Like, she still had empathy, but she definitely just didn't care at the moment to
Yeah.
be understanding.
So I don't think she qualifies as a narcissist, but she's definitely self-involved. Like, a lot more so. Like, all she cares about is, like
She compares herself to everyone.
Yeah,
and
then,
that's the biggest downfall.
yeah, and then also she just, like, tries to see what she can gain in a lot of ways, which is, like,
Playing a game.
yeah,
Like,
chess
yeah.
game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess we should continue down the path of changes. So, like, just the whole introduction to the characters were kind of different. I feel like the party scene was pretty accurate.
Most of the
Melissa's
pivotal
party.
scenes,
Yeah, it was just straight from the book.
which was awesome.
Except I don't think Nick was high.
Oh yeah, no, that's right.
And he wasn't in like the store because she went. Oh, he was in his room hiding out, and she went up there.
Just came in, yeah.
Yeah, which I don't know. I kind of liked the book's take on that because he was also just more vulnerable, and it makes more sense of why he waited there because he was also like high and just like not keeping track of time all that well. So and he's also concentrated on this one thing. So like I just feel like I don't know. I don't think it mattered all that much, but I like the book.
Wasn't a very drastic change. I can't really think of any other like major changes.
In the beginning.
Yeah, I feel like we pretty much covered it. I think
I think it just skipped a bunch of the like dinner scenes or just like the conversations they would have, or they like combined it together into one scene when it was actually separate in the book, which again I think they covered everything that needed to be covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So more of like the middle scene. One thing that I had a question, I don't know if I just forgot this part, but like when Bobby moved in with Francis, and then after Melissa's book reading, did she invite someone back over to their apartment in the book?
I don't think so.
I didn't think so. Okay. Because like that definitely, I kind of liked that addition because it added like Francis being jealous of that. And not really
added
knowing.
that layer of just like resentment.
So I kind of liked what the show did there. But then keeping on with that reading that Melissa had is the part where Francis was trying to make Nick jealous by like grabbing or like playing Bobby's hair and just teasing her, I guess.
Yeah, which is just like so like watching that, I was like, oh, that's so weird.
It's cringy, and I think it makes more sense of why Bobby got so peeved. I mean, Bobby should have been peeved in both of them because Francis was using her, but like that touch of it was like visually very well done. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, Bobby, please get him in her face and tell her off because...
Yeah, uncool. I felt bad for the person who was just sitting there like... Yeah. That would have been awkward. I've been like, ooh, I guess I'll leave now.
Even though they were the bartender and couldn't leave.
Yeah, the bartender's like, want a drink?
But yeah, again, Frances left early like in the book.
That's her move. She leaves. She leaves when it gets hard.
Okay, things are difficult. Yeah. Exactly. And Melissa even brought that up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the fling that Francis had.
Yeah.
It kind of just like didn't. It happened, and it was a plot point for her to then bring it up with Nick.
Yeah.
But it felt like not as important as it was. Like the show made it not as important as it was in the book. In a
Yeah.
sense that, or like the actual fling itself, not the part where Nick gets upset because Francis, said this to him, but like it just kind of like black screens, and like we never find out what she actually thought about the affair besides what she says to Nick to like cool him down.
Yeah.
And like she was pretty strongly affected by that fling in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, it got pretty bad.
Yeah.
Like, we also saw like a part of her where she was literally so desperate for Nick.
Yeah.
And
Or just for like attention.
but like she was getting attention, and it just wasn't the same. Like she was so infatuated. I wouldn't even call it love, just like lust.
Yeah, like right
with
then,
him.
yeah.
So
She's like, I just need anything at
Well,
this
I
point to
don't
like
think-
distract me, and then she got it. She's like,
Oh yeah.
I don't just need anything. I need you, Nick.
Exactly. She was like just lustful for Nick, and then
I love the conversation though they had, like watching it, where like she's telling Nick about it, and then like you can see like in the book like you kind of get hints that like Nick's a little bit peeved, but like you can see his demeanor shift, and how he's just like, what's her problem?
yeah, it was nice visually. Again,
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to see that played out because I feel like it just helped with the book.
Yeah.
Then after that, Philip finds out, but Frances like just straight up told Philip kind of like she didn't care. And I was like, because in the book, Bobby told Philip on accident and whatever. And I don't know, I don't think it mattered all that much, but like, do you think they did it on purpose to show that like Frances was just like, I love this man, like, I don't care who knows, kind of.
I think the whole purpose, like in the show actually, when Philip finds out, like I remember Bobby was doing it to like jab at Francis a little bit.
But she also thought that he already knew because he made a joke
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah. And but I liked that scene just because, again, very faithful to the source material, but also it just kind of shows how like Philip again is like the voice of like almost reason, or just like not necessarily reason, or more so just like the normal person, like, and how they would like react to it.
What?
Yeah.
Unfair.
Yeah, but he was sitting there and he was just like, he was trying to relate to Francis, or just be like, like
He's
a
way
good
too
friend.
calm about it, honestly.
Yeah, but he was like, oh, I didn't think you'd let somebody take advantage of you like that, which like, totally normal response. If I hear like, oh, you're a mistress of this wealthy, rich man,
Yeah.
like, wow, that's not very fair to you. Like,
Right, like the power he also had in
Yeah.
just like being an actor. And
yeah, and like her response of just being like offended, and then Philip's just sitting there like, oh, sorry. He's like, well, I am so confused right now. You're like, that's him the whole time. I love Philip for that reason, actually.
But I also think it wasn't in character for her what I assumed she was like before, because obviously, well, we know of her in the book, it was in character because that's all we know.
Yeah.
But basing it off of like what she said that her beliefs were and like the things she's done in the past, that we've learned about, like it seemed like she'd strongly be like no to men taking advantage. Not that he did, like he
Yeah.
never really used his power
Yeah.
over her in any
Never
sense,
did.
but it does seem like that, and you think she'd be like, oh, red flag, I don't want to
Yeah,
get involved
she'd
with
be
a
like-
rich male. I don't
He was
know.
just cheating on his wife.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that is probably the whole point of Philip. But I don't know. He was just like,
He was even less important in the show than he was in the book.
I know, which was like that even like made me wonder. I'm like, what the hell is the point of like including him at points? But then it makes sense because you get to see like the contrast of like what Bobby and Francis are doing, and what Philip is doing, which is totally normal.
And they give an opportunity for them to explain their
points.
opinion,
Yeah.
on it, which we don't get to actually hear that much about.
Right, and that argument in the coffee shop about monogamy, and then Bobby going off. That's the least likable that she gets.
In the show, yeah.
Yeah, because that poor girl, like Philip's girl.
Yeah, his new girlfriend's just like immediately intimidated by.
Yeah, and Bobby's being so mean, just so rude. And then you could see Philip, like, I feel like in the book, Philip gets a little bit more mad. But,
Yeah,
like, in the
100%.
show, Philip's just like, what are you doing? And he's like, stop it.
Well, he's probably he honestly should have been used to the way that she acts. It's not like that's anything new for Bobby. She was more aggressive than she normally would be, but, like, the thing she was talking about wasn't new.
Yeah.
So I feel like it makes more sense that he'd just be like, why are you doing this? Instead of, getting mad.
I probably, like, but if I was Philip, I probably would have got mad. I'd been like, hey,
okay.
hey, this is my girl that I am interested in, and if you're my friend, you'll give her a chance, you know?
Yeah.
No, just, like, get mad that she likes monogamy.
Ew, monogamy. So, why would you tap the microphone? Your intrusive thoughts almost won. I'm cutting this out.
Okay.
So, yes.
So, Papa.
Why? How do British people say it? Father.
Daddy. Papa.
I think we got one of those. Comment down below
if we just nailed it. All right. So the dad. What'd you think? Was it silly? Was it goofy?
First part I want to bring up is the call that he had to Francis.
The worrying one.
Yes, and she received it in the show while she was out and about, and she responded by calling her mom and like asking what the hell is going on. Understandably so. She was still freaked out. However, in the book, she receives it at home and she just kind of like spirals.
Yeah, it doesn't tell anybody, right?
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't confront it at all, and we don't even really know what's going on as an audience. Like, I know I thought that it was like his last message. Anyways, and then immediately Nick calls her and is like, "Hey, baby girl, can I come over?" Like, and he doesn't know that this happened. Obviously, she's like, "Baby girl, let me hit that." So she says
that exactly.
She of course is like not confronting her problems or communicating anything. So he gets there and she's like on the verge of tears, if not already crying. And she starts crying and it's so awkward. And then she like out of this spiral and out of just what's the word? Like spur of the moment, she breaks up with him because he thinks that she's just like kind of moved on or whatever, because she again doesn't explain anything, but she then gets upset because she doesn't think that he's enjoying it, which like obviously when you're crying it's not really an enjoyable experience.
Oh yeah, when they're yeah,
when he's hitting the, as he said, quote. So
as he was tapping.
I feel like that was way more in character with Francis, and like the way that they broke up the first time around that same period, it just didn't. It was like way too mature for them, like, especially when she called him to the park and was like, "I don't think that this is working out." It just seemed like so out of the blue for her character to be handling it like that, and I didn't like that breakup scene. But I think that, along with kind of the introduction, was my biggest peeve with the show. However, like almost every other part of the show was like word for word, basically, of the book. It was really good. And then second part of her dad, you wanted to bring up something.
Oh, just like the actor?
Well, not necessarily the actor, but like the kind of that storyline wasn't expanded on.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I guess it's like kind of the same in the book, like, oh no, I know exactly what you meant now. But yeah, I feel like this is just a problem with the source material as well. But like, obviously, like it's an issue and it brings Frances down, and you can tell it's a big point of contention in her life, and like it's a lot, like it explains a lot as to why she is the way she is.
And she's almost embarrassed by it, and I think that ties into her being afraid of being judged, and so she hides as part of her.
Right, and I feel like in those moments where you're like, oh, like there's something wrong with her dad, this is not going to end well, you'd think they would have, it would be more suspense for her. You'd think there would be more things going wrong, which if she was going for, I guess, like realism, then I mean, I think she achieved that because her dad's just kind of wishy-washy and in a weird spot mentally. But I would have thought for the story, I kind of would have liked the stakes to be a little bit higher.
Yeah, I feel like they left off, especially since in the show, looping back, she calls her mom immediately, and her mom's like, "We have someone in contact with your dad. He's okay." It's like, okay, now
Yeah,
problem
yeah,
averted. Well, in the book, we didn't know what happened, like genuinely, until the next time he was mentioned, because she just didn't acknowledge that issue.
right, yeah, and that did build up more suspense, but it was, I don't know,
I didn't think that they kept the plot line of the
suspense,
father as they didn't hold it as important in the show.
yeah, and I think something that I'm kind of realizing now a little bit more is that I think the point of her father in this whole story, maybe when it relates to Frances, is what she could end up like.
I
Because
didn't think about that.
he's shut in, unable to communicate, unhappy, and he's just like addicted to substances. And I guess that's kind of foreshadowing for Frances if she doesn't figure out how to communicate.
That's true.
Because
And
they
if
kind
she
of
like
she kind of
ties herself down to this closed like box that she keeps herself in
yeah,
of the world.
yeah. I feel like that's what her father's kind of like an example of, because she definitely is a lot like him.
Yeah, for sure. Especially the communication. Um, that's a good point. I really didn't think about that.
Yeah, I think that's probably what he was meant
Yeah,
to be.
I would think so.
But at the end, she kind of breaks out of it. And it's a very
Yes,
satisfying ending in the show as well. Pretty much
they
exactly the
did.
same.
The only difference was that she didn't ask, or she didn't say like, "Hey, I wish you would compliment me more," and then Nick said,
Yeah.
like, "Well, this isn't really a compliment," which don't think added that much, but I did kind of think it was cuter in the book because it kind of also solved her worry throughout the whole book, which this wasn't really a plot point in the show. But her worry of like just not being complimented and him not appreciating her, like constantly was running through her mind anytime they would hang out. And I think that the way that he used this story in this exact moment kind of expressed like ever since the beginning I've been infatuated with you and just haven't even had the words to describe like how I felt. And this is all like like not said. It's kind of reading between the lines of what I saw from the ending.
Hmm.
And she realizes like, oh, I don't need to hear this because or hear him compliment me for like the little things because I've heard enough in the way that he's thought about me all this time,
Hmm.
and waited for me and everything, which made it like that much more satisfying. But it was still such a good ending, and they did
Awesome,
such
yeah.
a good job. And the soundtrack behind that and the lighting and the scenery, it was so
Even
just
Nick, like,
good.
crying in the car and everything was just, like, very, very emotionally satisfying.
Yeah.
And I love that, like, it loops back into, like, basically what was making Frances kind of hurt is, like, she's coming back to it, but in another light, where she won't end up in a situation like her father.
That's true. Yeah. That kind of counteracts what you said last week about how do you
Yeah.
think that the show kind of changed, like you're now seeing it play out, it changed that.
Perspective a little bit, yeah, definitely. I think what I thought of it last time was just kind of like, oh, well, like they're going to continue on down this path. It's going to be a little bit better, but they're still going to have a lot of issues. And it wasn't so much of a resolution. But I think now that I've kind of seen it again, essentially, I've seen the same story twice. So, like, I think that's kind of what changed my opinion in general. But I will say I was pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
because this, like I said, I really did think it was going to be a chore to watch, and that I was just going to have to like really get through this and just be like, okay, blah, buckle down, just like sit there. It's background noise, but I was genuinely pleasantly surprised. I really liked this show.
Yeah. And I think if you've seen the show, it's so, and haven't read the book, it's so worth reading the book, because you also just pick up on different things as we've done, and seeing it from a slightly different light, but knowing enough where you can kind of read in between the lines and see, things you might have missed. It's so worth reading the book.
Yeah.
And I would say, if you read the book and haven't seen the show, it's worth that, but you probably aren't here at the end if you've seen the show. But yeah, I would highly suggest this for kind of looping it back to the beginning. The kind of people that I mentioned. The only person I wouldn't suggest it to is people that hate this genre, obviously, or
if you're
that are new to it.
Also, if you like plot.
Yeah, true. Yes, this is very character driven.
Yeah,
I
very,
should have
very
mentioned
character
that
driven.
in the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is why we talked about characters for the majority of this, or just how they were.
Yeah, you could tell how we liked the story just because we're like, oh, it's interesting
it.
this part. And,
Yeah, and it's like we found so much to talk about, even though it's
so mundane.
Yeah, there's so little actually happening.
Yeah,
So,
I want to read more by her, and if they make another show, I'll watch it.
Yeah, I mean, Normal People has a show.
Right.
With it, let us know.
Apparently the favorite. So.
Yeah, let us know if you would want us to read and review the book and show Normal People, because I think we're both kind of interested in it.
I'm definitely down for another Sally Rooney read.
You're gonna be a sad girl now.
I'm gonna get it. I'm gonna be such an ally.
I am excited. I know it's more romance driven.
I'm kind of figuring out. I'm really liking romance in books. I usually like it as a side note, but I guess I'm just a hopeless romantic.
Have you read a straight romance?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You haven't really gotten a taste for it. I know that Normal People still literary fiction, but it's more concentrated, I think, on, first of all, one relationship, and the complications with that. I don't know all that much about it, so if I'm completely wrong, please don't.
I think You is like a romance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think it's just like complicated. Life's complicated.
It's about really good people and good examples of what a healthy relationship should look like.
Right, just a few issues here and there, but they overcome it, and it.
Yeah. Happy
highly
ending.
suggest, if you haven't seen a review of You, go give that a watch too. It'll really contrast this unhealthy relationship we talk about with a very healthy one.
Yes. We are so joking.
I didn't get that memo.
Oh, my bad. Anyways, should we end it here?
I think so.
Okay. Well, bye!
Join us next week for our next book.